Hi, everybody. It's Chrislene. And hey, happy May 4th be with you today. The best way to celebrate this day is to tell you a little bit of trivia about Star Wars, to learn something new about the galaxy far, far away. So here are some fascinating facts that I want to share with you. Luke Skywalker was a hero with 1,000 faces. What does that mean, 1,000 faces? Well, we all know that writers and directors like George Lucas, who wrote Star Wars, read books, and Steven Spielberg, and they searched for characters and they wanted to replicate things that were instilled in them. Well, he had a 1930s fairy tale Western series. It was based on the book by Joseph Campbell called The Hero with 1,000 Faces. The book tracked common mythology, and it had been passed down through generations, like Beowulf and King Arthur. Think of King Arthur days. A hero ventures from the world and goes, just like common day now, but go into supernatural and into a region and fabulous forces and encounters that you cannot believe. Victory is won when the hero comes back with a mysterious venture behind him, only to know that he saved the princess. And these characters were low characters. They were the lowest you could think of. And this was George Lucas's main thought: I will make Luke my main hero. Well, then he went to Akira Kurosawa in 1958, that book called The Hidden Fortress, telling a story of roguish generals protecting a beautiful princess who falls to evil claims behind enemy lines. The one thing that really intrigued him was the fact that these two low characters told it all, told the whole story. And it was everything they could think of that intrigued him. I decided, he said, that'd be a nice way to tell Star Wars story. The fact that there was a princess trying to get through enemy lines and was a coincidence, really. Well, perhaps you would wonder where he gets all these thoughts and all this imagination. And when it first came out, we could not believe what we were seeing. Well, Jedi comes from a word from Japanese called Jadagiga, meaning period drama. So the Jedi, that's where that came from. So he began to write a 13-page treatment. That's what they call the storylines. And he titled it The Star Wars. Universal and United Artists Studios, they dropped it. They said, hey, even though he had written American Graffiti and had 5 Oscar for Best Picture, Best Director, and such, they passed it by, saying it was far-flung sci-fi that was too confusing. Oh, not to us. We loved it, didn't we? The treatment was eventually picked up by 20th Century Fox Alan Ladd Jr., who gave Lucas a deal in 1974. The final screenplay returned, but when he already had written 200 pages, guess what? That wrote not only Star Wars, but The Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi, which I love personally. Jabba the Hutt. I mean, what can we say? Then he had to start planning the cast. He started looking at what he loved, and it pretty much came up with pretty much the adventures, if you want to think of Lord of the Rings, which can't have enough Lord of the Rings, huh? The first sound effect he created was Chewbacca. Oh, we love Chewbacca. The voice was blended with bears, lions, and walruses and badgers vocalizing together. R2-D2, his voice was made into loops with synthesizing beeps and hoops of models after baby coos. The coo of a baby. And then the great guy who put all this together was a well-known new artist and sound system guy named Bert himself. He intrigued Darth Vader's sound by breathing a microphone into a microphone and then putting it in a regulator on a scuba tank. And that's how that's how the breathing came about. And then some of the sounds were actually mules, sounds of mules that they would change up. And the lightsaber whooshes was a blend of hums by a 35 millimeter projector passing by a microphone that was swinging, a broken microphone cable that was swinging. If we only knew, huh? That these were how they were coming about. Well, then he had to come up with a cast. Who was going to be my heroes? Han Solo was by accident. He heard Harrison Ford read, and he really wanted Kirk Russell, but then Harrison Ford beat him out and did so at the line study. Couldn't help it. He had to have Harrison Ford. Well, the legendary sounds really came from Ben Burt, like I told you. And then Darth Vader, how'd he come up with the word Darth Vader? Well, dark, he just made that up and just kind of played off of the word dark. And then Vader was another kind of little variation of father. And it really was Dark Father. Orson Welles was going to play Darth Vader, but he thought that voice was too common anymore. So James Earl Jones, nonetheless, worked for a day, literally a day. He won out as Darth Vader's voice, the unmistakable baritone that we know. He was given $7,500 for his service, and his lines completed in 2.5 hours. All of his lines were done in 2.5 hours. Mark Hamill and Carrie Fisher had to do many stunts themselves. Lucas's real-life war footage was real. His space footage was real war battles. His space battles, if you look at them, they were just mimicked. The theater didn't even want the movie. 40 theaters, they had to actually bribe them to get 40 movies to agree to show it. 40 movie theaters. And they wanted to show a movie. They were waiting for The Other Side of Midnight. And so they tried to make a deal with them and said, if you show that, we'll help you show The Other Side of Midnight if you show Star Wars. It eventually became the greatest grossing movie in all its time. Aren't we glad for that, huh? Due to the overwhelming success of Star Wars, he had to kind of become real quiet about doing the rest of them, but he ended up putting up his own money so that he had his own say and he could run everything. It was going to be, he knew it was going to be a blockbuster, but nobody else was going to touch it because of the movie theaters and how long it was. Well, once he returned to Kurosaka for inspiration, that's how he got his character for Yoda. Yoda was going to be he was really the leader samurai of the Seven Samurai, the movie of the book, The Seven Samurais. That was Kurosaka writing again. And that's where George Lucas went back again. He was a shaman, and that is a role model for the mentor figure for a lead samurai. And isn't he that to a T? To a T. In the early days of the screenwriting, Yoda's name originally was going to be Buffy. And he was Ming Yoda, and that was the lead Yoda, the only Yoda. And he was a puppet created by Jim Henson. Henson had recommended Frank Oz as Yoda's main puppeteer, and he was the puppeteer behind Miss Piggy, Bert, Grover, Cookie Monster, Animal, Sam the Eagle, and Fozzie the Bear. And he modeled Yoda's face by his own. My goodness. He modeled his eyes by Albert Einstein, and his face was Frank Oz, who was a puppeteer. And it gave him character. All right. Are you getting excited about this? Isn't this awesome? Little notes of when they reached asteroids, he would just they just spray painted potatoes and then just would show them and just move the cameras back and forth. The words in the beginning, the crawl, when you see the words and how it crawls, that was just words written down, and then the camera just crawled on it. Alex Guinness didn't even want to be in the movie. Alex Guinness, testy history with his legacy of Star Wars. He said it was a fairy tale rubbish of a story. He wanted nothing to do with it, with the Empire Strikes Back. Lucas eventually persuaded him. He played Obi-Wan Kenobi with Yoda. But Guinness only wanted to do it under strict conditions. He'd only work one day from 8:30 in the morning till 1 in the afternoon, and he would be paid 1/4 of the percent of the movie's total gross. 4.5 hours of work, and he made millions of dollars. We love that Obi-Wan Kenobi, don't we? To be Han Solo, to be a faithful exchange between Prince Leia and Han Solo, he was going to be, his best line was ad-libbed. He was going to be put on the spot so he could ad-lib a little bit. But when she said, "I love you," he was supposed to say, "I love you too." But he said, "I know." Now, I remember her saying this when they were in Return of the Jedi, after he saves her, and he says, "I love you." She says, "I know." So he gets her back and says it again. They kept it in there. They didn't change a thing. And aren't we glad? Because it was just perfect. Darth Vader's reveal was kept under wraps. Only a few people knew that he was Luke's father. Oh my gosh, I remember that moment. And what happened was they put many different lines in the storyline as they would practice and read. And Mark Hamill, who played Han Solo, or played Luke Skywalker, he only knew minutes before, so that it would be, he would feel you would feel his acting of how he just was shocked about it. Like, my father, no way. It took up to 7 different puppets to be Jabba the Hutt, puppeteers. Jabba was inspired by a British actor, Sidney Greenstreet, who appeared in many movies like The Maltese Falcon and The Casablanca. The massive puppet, created by Yoda's designer, Stuart Freeborn, was created by a handful of puppeteers. 3 were inside to control the right arm, the jaw. Another handled the left hand and the jaw and the tongue and the head movement, and both of them moved the body. The third person was in the tail, which I don't remember that tail being that powerful, really. But I mean, 3 people in the tail alone. There was 1 or 2 people on radio controls that controlled the eyes, someone under the stage that blew cigar smoke up a tube, and another working the billows of the lungs. I mean, remember his laugh? His laugh was something. Han Solo was supposed to die and be frozen, but we couldn't let that happen. George Lucas wanted all his heroes to live. Luke almost got a girlfriend. He was supposed to get one, and at first you thought that Leia was a girlfriend, but it turns out she was his sister. So that made many turns, and we were just so excited. Couldn't wait for the movie to come out again and again and again. Excuse me. So anyhow, I'm turning pages here to show you that there's just so much to know.